All right, gang.
Everyone here from, oh, go ahead. Go ahead, you there.
Yep, we're going to get this party started. See if any last minute. Okay. We got Tanya coming in. Admit these last couple people. Get them in. Hello, Matt Madden. What's up, brother?
Hey.
How you guys doing?
Good. Should turn them in.
All right. Hello, Miss Tanya. What's up? What's up?
There's that $1 million smile.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, guys, I'm pumped. This is recorded, so you'll get a recording of this. If you want to pass it on to spouse, friend, somebody, if there's a valuable nugget, just a little, jot down a little note at what time it was taken so you can share it. But I'm excited for this call. I'm more excited that Sal and Ryan have both agreed to jump on this call as a follow-up to the Take Back Control Empowerment event that went way better than we ever expected. Over 200 people came out that night. And that night was really all about the student athletes. We talked directly to them to help equip them with tools, with resources so that they could ultimately take back control of their mindset and of their experience in sports and in life. And so at that event, we let you guys know, hey, we're going to also do a call just for parents because there were so many of you that wanted to just figure out how you could best support your student athlete in this journey and in this wacky world that we're in right now. So I love this community. Sal, you and Ryan, just so you guys know, this community is largely made up of PFP people, youth truth people who have read the book. And so this whole community of parents are some of the most humble, coachable, eager to get better, eager to learn parents. I would argue that we're not going to have anyone on this call tonight that is going to say, oh, I've already heard that. I've got it all together. I figured it out, right? Like everyone on this call, we're united because we want so badly to see a world where every student athlete is mentally healthy, is thriving, and has leaders in their lives that they can look up to. So kudos to you parents for being here, for listening in on this. I've got a little PowerPoint, the most boring PowerPoint of all time. It's black and white, but I've got the PowerPoint of questions to keep us on track that you guys have asked. I will say, if you have questions that come up as we go through this, drop them in the chat. Drop them in the chat. I'll pull them up, and we'll dive into them one by one. There's not a set time for this call. As long as there's quality content being shared and you guys are staying, we'll stay. I'm speaking for both Sal and Ryan here, but I think that they're on board for that. So let's do this before we jump into it. If you don't know Sal and Ryan, I want them to give you I want them to have a chance to introduce themselves. Ryan has become a friend over these last 6 months or so. I really look up to the work that he does with student athletes. His reputation precedes him. But the thing that I've asked each of them to share is, number one, why do you do what you do? And then number two, what do you do? Because why you do what you do is much more powerful than what you do. So Ryan, if you don't mind kicking it off and sharing first.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Andrew. And thank you all for jumping on tonight. Excited to keep the message moving forward. So why do I do what I do? I never planned on being a counselor. I never planned on being a coach. And life has a funny way of finding you, I think. So I graduated college and was going to athletic training, and I had a coach reach out to me about becoming a grad assistant for soccer. I played soccer in college. And I was like, yeah, well, it's free master's degree. I'm in. And after 1 year of it, I said, I love this coaching thing. It makes sense to me, like the connection with people and helping people grow. And after the second year, I said, I want to pursue this more. I kind of put the athletic training piece on hold and coached another year at my school at McDaniel College. And then got hired at Penn State University and coached there for a while. And it was while at Penn State that the desire to go a little deeper than just the physical performance started creeping in. And I saw high caliber athletes perform well on one day and not perform well the next day, and just fluctuate in performance. And we knew their physical ability wasn't changing. And the more conversations we had with them, the more we realized they were bringing stuff onto the field, whether it's doubt, hesitation, worry, fear, stuff from school, stuff from relationships, family. And it really opened my eyes to, our athletes, again, they're human first, they're people first, and we really need to make sure we're meeting them on the person, the human level, and understanding all the complexities that we all have. And so that was my first like thought of, I want to do something else other than the on the sport coaching. And then actually the women's soccer team brought in a sports psychologist right around that time, and I got to talk to her and see some of the stuff she was doing. I was like, man, this is amazing. And it just, that seed was planted there before I even knew it was planted. And so when actually our head coach left to go coach in the MLS, and the new coach came in, and you know how that goes sometimes. And it was a perfect transition. He said, you can stay on. I said, you know what? No, I think I got something else I want to do. And the why of all that is I saw the need to approach athletics differently, and for performance, and for not only performance, but for the growth of our young men and women. It kind of called out to me. And that's how I coach. It's not just about the wins and losses. It's about, are we generating are we creating the person that they can be, right? And so there's such a deeper level there. And the wins and losses are great. They're part of it. The ups and downs are things that we'll remember, and we love the competition, but what do we take out of that? What do we learn? And what do we learn about ourselves through it all is much more important for our young people.
Amen to that. And you're a counselor at what school?
Yeah, so I'm a school counselor at Walkersville High School, and then I have my private practice, MBS Performance Counseling, where I work with athletes from the professional, college, high school, and a couple of middle school athletes as well, on the mental, emotional parts of performance, but then also like in life, and how we can deal with the ups and downs, the successes and failures, and how we can look at them differently, and how we can challenge how society's taught us to look at them.
Yep. And you have a wife, and how many kids?
Wife and 3 kids. They're all sleep trained. Well, they used to be. They got older, and now they don't sleep again. Yeah, I have 6-year-old twins and a 10-year-old, all boys. Our oldest works out at PFP as well, so he's loving it there. And so, yeah.
Yep. And so daytime counselor, nighttime, you're just pouring into these athletes one at a time, doing workshops and stuff. So that just shows Ryan's heart for really what he's doing and the work that he's trying, and the impact he's trying to make. So thanks, Ryan. Next up.
Jason's little question. Sorry, I saw Jason's question. No, I work with all athletes. I've worked with football, basketball, wrestling, field hockey, lacrosse. I mean, you name it. I have an equestrian I worked with. So like that was news to me. So, but yeah, so all sports. I think I've hit them all at this point.
Cool. So next is my brother Sal, who I met, I don't even know now, maybe a year and a half ago, a friend of mine. And the more that I got to know Sal, the more I realized how brilliant he was in a very different way than the sports psychology side of things. He comes at it from a different background. So Sal, share why you do what you do, and then what you do.
Definitely. I want to piggyback on what Ryan said. Thank you all for taking time out of your Tuesday night to spend it with us. Really appreciate it. Shows your willingness and the effort to learn more about your kids and mental health. So my why is, it's multifaceted, but I'll get to the crux of it. About 6 years ago, I had a traumatic incident in which really turned my life around. Kind of took everything that I knew, my beliefs, my perceptions, my understandings of the world, of people, and it toppled it on its backside. And it left me hopeless, helpless, confused, disoriented. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know how to trust. I lost my sense of self. I lost what the essence of me and like the values in which I had once accumulated, over years of my life. And then by the grace of God, a therapist reached out to me and said, I would love to treat you. My story got popped on the news. So what happened, I'll just give you a little bit of context. About 6 years ago, I was stabbed 4 times in the heart, the liver, and the lungs, and one more time in the back. And that's what changed my world around. And when this therapist reached out to me, she said, I would love to treat you, and I want to treat you pro bono. I love your story. I think I could do some great work with you. So after about, I would say 6 to 8 sessions, all of my traumatic symptoms were completely eradicated. The flashbacks, the nightmares, the panic attacks, everything that was creating this disillusionment in my life, that I couldn't feel safe. I couldn't feel I couldn't feel grounded. I couldn't feel connected with other people and myself. And after that, I realized I knew I wanted to be in the profession, but I didn't know what niche I wanted to be. And that catapulted me into trauma therapy. So that takes me into my what? I am a trauma psychotherapist. I am also director of my private practice. I just work in private practice. I co-own 3 private practices, one in Millersville, one in Catonsville, and one in Columbia, Maryland. And we're hoping to move to Frederick, open up a private practice in Frederick in the next year to 2 years. And I work predominantly with young adults all the way up to ages about 40 to 50, so middle-aged adults as well. And my connection to this talk tonight is I was a former athlete as well. I played college basketball all the way through college. And just this last little tidbit that I want to throw out there, or I guess kind of point here, is that created my sense of identity. It was such an encompassing part of my identity that when I left basketball, I didn't really know who I was, where to go, how to navigate life. And the therapy that I administer now, it helps people through that transitional period, and it helps people, kids and adults realize, the parts and facets of themselves outside of just, one arena of life. So it's like encompassing on learning about yourself and your identity. And that's all I got for you.
Perfect. Thanks, Sal. So guys, the way this is going to flow tonight, I honestly am not sure. I can't speak for these guys, but I'm not sure that you're going to hear anything that you've never heard before. I think this night's going to be a lot of great reminders and things that maybe as a parent you once heard and they were like, oh man, I really need to start applying that. I really need to stop saying this to my kid, or I really need to start saying this, or I really need to avoid this question, or whatever, right? Tools and tactics and ways to navigate this stuff. So I don't think there's going to be anything necessarily breakthrough, but I really do want you guys, if you have questions that come up in your mind, there's no dumb question, just dump them in the chat and we will do our best to answer them. I don't know if we'll have all the answers or the perfect answers, but we'll give it our best crack at it. And then honestly, if you parents have things that you've learned along the way or things that have worked for you and you want to chime in on somebody else's question,
yes,
I'm game for that too, right? I mean, that's what this is all about. It's about us learning from each other. I think that we're all experts in different things. So let's kick this thing off with, and again, go ahead and use the chat to pop in questions, but let's kick this thing off with this beautifully designed PowerPoint. What? It's good. It's been a busy couple of weeks, man. All right. So first question, pretty straightforward. It's a good one. How can I help my student overcome anxiety and stress, whether it is performance related or life? So how can that's an important word that's missing. This is a parent that is really like trying to figure out like them personally, what can they do to help an athlete or a student overcome stress and anxiety? Starting out with a big one. Who wants to go first, Ryan or Sal?
I mean, I'll jump in and then I think we can work off each other, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think first is understanding what anxiety and stress really are. And I talk to so many student athletes and parents about this, and a lot just know them by the symptoms, right? Oh, my heart rate's going fast. I get fixated on the negative thought. I, get jittery. All these things that is actually our body working correctly, right? So like stress, anxiety is that response to a perceived threat. So that's the quickest working definition I utilize with the athletes is anxiety is response to a perceived threat. So before we can help them overcome it, we help them understand it. So what is anxiety? Why are we feeling the jitteriness? Why are we getting stuck on that negative thought? Why are our heart rate racing? Why do we feel dehydrated? And letting them know that's their body working correctly. So we take that fear level out of it in a way. Like we normalize it. Like, hey, your body is working exactly how it should in response to a perceived threat. You're supposed to get jittery because oxygen is sent to all of your major muscles. It's preparing for that fight or flight to either fight against that threat or run from it. Our heart rate goes up because we're pumping more blood through our body so we can, again, respond to that threat. We get a dry mouth because we don't need water to digest food. We don't need the saliva to digest food. It needs to be repurposed into our body to, again, fight or flight. So when we let them know nothing's wrong with them, we get fixated on the thought, because when there's a threat in front of us, if there's a bear on the same path as us, we don't care what color the leaves are or whatever else is on that path. We need to know what the bear is doing, right? So this is all a human emotion for survival. And so it's your body working correctly. So where I'll leave this, and I'll be quiet and then let Sal kick in, and we'll go back and forth. Let's identify the threat. What do they see as a threat when it comes to their sport, school, relationships, friendships, social? Like, what is it that they're worried about? And when we can identify that, now we can help them challenge that threat and realize, hey, maybe I'm not under threat. Maybe it isn't worst case scenario, and start showing them where they can work through that. So I don't even call it overcoming. I call it managing, because we're not eliminating anxiety and stress. We want to understand it and manage it for ourselves so we can perform in whatever arena in life that we want.
Yeah, that's good.
Well
Sal,
said.
what do you got?
So what I would recommend starting with is developing a space, a comfortable, safe space for your teen, your student to feel like their guard is down and they can be honest about what they're going through. And that's where we utilize the power of dialogue and communication, right? Asking them, when is the stress happening? When are you experiencing the anxiety? How long does it last? What's happening to your body? Where do your thoughts go? I love that Ryan is alluding to the fact that anxiety is that communication to the brain of, hey, something's happening in your environment, you need to react to it, right? So it is your body acting appropriately, right? This is evolutionarily based. But when that's happening, we've got to be able to discern and assess, is this thing going to hurt me? Or is it something that I'm overthinking, right? Looking at the thought patterns and beliefs. But as I want to back up a little bit, not be so clinical, but identifying the difference between the good stress and the bad stress, right? Good stress is when your heart rate elevates a little bit, you're a little bit more focused on what's in front of you, so you have more of like a kind of a tunneled vision, and your heart rate's going to pop up a little bit. You're going to feel a little shaky and at ease. That's a good thing. That means that your brain and body are allowing yourself to say, okay, I'm in a middle state of alertness, and I'm able to focus more keenly. When it goes into the danger zone, that's when you lose the sense of control. That's when you breach into anxiety attacks and you feel like you're having a heart attack. You feel like there's a health condition occurring then, right? So teaching them the difference between the two, so we know, okay, is this into the realm of anxiety attacks where we need the help from a professional, or we need to go to our pediatrician, primary care, and have a quick assessment, see what the deal is. Or is it more stress from specific isolated events in their environments? But I think really sparking the dialogue of, when is this happening? Who are you with? Get the details of the environment so you can see what things that their brain perceives as anxiety provoking or stress inducing. But really, like, the importance, like, one thing Ryan and we must do as therapists is we've got to create a space where our clients feel comfortable sharing these things. So if your student or your child, they don't feel comfortable, or they feel as if you may judge them or lecture them, they're going to rescind and they're going to withdraw, and they're not going to want to open up. So
it's I love that you brought that up, because it's so important. We don't just jump right in and say, here's what you do. And I know as much, and I'm a parent too, and we want to help them, right? And we want to kind of save them from that negative feeling, but they don't always want that. Sometimes I had my own son, he missed a penalty kick in soccer and he was coming off the field, and my first thought was, hey, let's normalize, right? This happens, the pros miss, and he looks at me, he's 9 at the time, and he goes, just let me be mad. And I went, oh yeah, you're right. And I just stopped, and we didn't say anything else about it. And he felt bad about it. He felt sad about it. He felt upset about it. He felt a little anxious, like the next time I had to go take one. But he worked through that. And by the time we got to the car, all he wanted to know is where we're getting food, right? And it was okay for him to work through that a little bit and give him that space to let him work through. Then he brought it up to me later that night, right? Like at like 8 o'clock, he's like, hey, yeah, so what do I do when I'm feeling like worried going up to take the next one? Like, and then that conversation was more me not jumping in and trying to fix it or telling him what to do. It was him exploring it and asking, and that space was created with my own kid. And I almost forgot my my counselor self because I was dad at that time, right? And so I think it's really important to create that space to normalize the conversation, right? To be able to talk about how we're feeling, what we're thinking, without having to then jump right to a solution on them. To let them just say, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm worried about, this is what I'm concerned about, this is what makes me anxious, right? And just to hear them, I think is important.
That's good.
And
Christine.
I see 2 questions in the chat.
I was going to say, Christine. Yeah. She said 30 seconds into me trying to explain that these feelings of stress are normal, my teen is tuning me out. Who can relate to that? What then?
So the teen's going to perceive that as lecturing, right? You telling them what to do, how it's happening, and that's where the guard is going to go up, and they're going to push you away. In that instance, you kind of want to give them a little control if they're able to assess that, like a level of control, but more so of just saying, like if you ask at first, like, hey, what's stressing you out, and they're not able to answer, they're saying like, Dad, Mom, get away from me, then say, okay, I'll give you 15 minutes. If take a break, get a snack, and then do you mind if I come back and ask you what's going on? Because then that you give them space to get some separation. Because the worst thing we can do is poke, prod, and chase. We do not want to do that. That's going to push them into a corner. And a lot of times they'll either lie because they just want to give you something to get the heck away from, or they're going to fight you, right? Because you're putting them in fight or flight state at that time. So allow them to have a little bit of space, but just remind them that you're going to come back to the subject. Asking them is very powerful because then that gives them permission. And whenever the brain hears permission, they're going to say, okay, I've got a sense of control here. Then it's one less thing to feel stressed about. So they can say yes or no, and if they do that, just give them a little bit of privacy, unless they're hurting themselves or hurting someone else. Give them a little bit of time to decompress, let them get a snack, a drink, and then just come back to the conversation.
Yeah. I noticed, like, if we try to have it too quickly after an event, like they're already charged up, they're already emotional, they're already blocked and guarded. My rule for myself is I never bring up anything about a sporting event with my kid until they bring it up to me at this point. Like, if it seems like it's bothering them, but like when we get in the car, we don't need to solve everything that went right or wrong in that moment. I'm just dad. Like, I'm going to give him a hug and we're going to talk about food, and I'll let him bring it to me. And a lot of times my clients are that way. Like, I'll talk to parents and they'll say, oh, like they haven't shared that with me before. And it's like, well, yeah, because like this is a space where your mom and dad, sometimes it's tough to wear that hat as counselor also. Right. And and for the kid, it's tough to go, okay, am I talking to mom, dad, or kind of counselor or teacher, or like, who is it? And so giving them that space and allowing them to bring it to you, I find a lot of times just, hey, I noticed you look stressed today. I like, they can't argue with that. Like, it seems to me that you're a little anxious about something. Like, no, I'm not. Okay. If you are, I'm here to talk. If you just want to let some things, you just want to talk about some things, you kind of bring it back to them and give them some autonomy there. But if they feel lectured, they're going to shut down because they're lectured.
Ryan, I think what you just said though at the end there, when the parent says, well, you know what, I'm here if you need to talk. I've heard parents say to me after I respond like that, they say like, well, then that's when I get the eye roll, or my kid's like, oh yeah, sure. I want to just encourage you that by saying that, it's playing the long game, right?
Yes.
Like, they might not immediately give you this, oh, thanks, Mom, I'm so glad that you're going to be there for me. Like, they're not going to respond like that, but they're going to remember. And so I would say, if it's not a 911 emergency situation, which most of the time it's not, right? When your kid is experiencing some anxiety or stress, play the long game. Be really, like these guys already said, be really good at listening. Be a master at saying, oh man, tell me more about, right? Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. Ask questions, play the long game. And then eventually they might ask for direct advice, right?
Mhm.
I think that that's a key. My couple of points here, because those were all really good. You guys basically said, number one, normalize it, which means talk about it, which also means admit when you have it, right? Share when you're experiencing the anxiety and stress with them. And it doesn't always have to be in response to when they're talking about it. I think it's more powerful if you, when they're in a great place, they're in a great state of mind, you admit or you share when something's going on with you that isn't great, right? When you're stressed out and you're not sure how to solve it. And then say, hey, Johnny, Susie, like, how do you feel like what's the best way for me to solve this? Right? Because then they can become a coach. They can be able to share. And so I think that autonomy is important. And then something super practical, have a family mantra. This might sound silly, but like, we are the Simpsons and we lean into fear, right? We're the Simpsons and we lean into fear. Like, you repeat that over and over again, and then they see it modeled. I'm going to talk a lot about modeling tonight. It'll go a long way over time, but it's about playing the long game. It's not about trying to solve it overnight. So that was good stuff. That was really good stuff. Tanya said, wait until the car ride. They tend to open up more when you're not face to face. That's true. That's definitely true.
I'll give one of my favorite questions, and it's as simple as it comes, is what would you say to a friend?
Mm-hmm.
It allows them to disconnect from their own kind of experience, and allows them to step back and see it from outside themselves, which allows them to be a little more rational about it too, if it's becoming an irrational thought. And some of the conversations that have come from that question alone, it's awesome because it takes the threat out of it, like we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
It allows them to say, oh, well, I would tell a friend, like, hey, that test isn't that big of a deal. You can go get extra credit. You can study for the next one. And then they stop and go, I see what you're doing. Like, they have the answers inside of them themselves. We got to tease them out a little bit or give them permission to like explore their own answers.
That's good. Yeah, I'll say I just have one more thing, because I know a lot of parents on here are probably thinking to themselves like, gosh, I've screwed this up a lot of times, right? I've messed this up. I did all the things you guys are saying not to do. Number one, you can redeem yourself, right? You can definitely redeem yourself, but you got to commit to stopping the, like Ryan was saying, like after a game. I've had parents before tell me like, I just can't, like, I'm trying, Andrew. I'm trying not to say stuff to them, but like, my emotions just get the best of me. And I just feel like I need to make a comment. I need to say something. And I'm like, well, you need to stop trying and you need to commit. You need to look at your son or daughter on a day that's not the game and tell them, Johnny, Susie, I'm so sorry that I've been doing this after games, that I always talk to you after games. I want to let you know right now, I'm committing to being different. And if I end up not doing this, just call me out on it. Like, that's, I think, what full commitment looks like versus I try, but my emotions just get the best of me, because I get it. I've been there before too. Sal, do you have anything else to close this one out on? And then we'll go to the next slide.
Yes, I love that point. A good question to ask yourself, and I ask this about myself as a therapist, as a fiance, as an uncle, all the time, is this for me? Do I need to say this? Or is this a need I'm filling for them? Or is
Good
this,
stuff.
right? So being able to determine that differential is key.
Perfect. All right. This ties right into it. I'm not sure if we have anything extra to add. This is more practical. What should I avoid saying or doing that could cause them to increase pressure, have increased pressure or anxiety? Are there any specific things?
So
I fired up because Jason, I love what you wrote, right? If this is something my dad would always tell me, he said, if you feel anxious or stressed or you're worried, you're pissed off, then you care. That did a great job of reframing it in my brain, of like normalizing and giving permission to feel. Right? I think a lot of teens, they fear their feelings, and they feel as if it's not okay, or it's weird, it's inappropriate, or something like that. So good point, Jason. Okay, void saying. I'm the one that I alluded to earlier, which I want to continue to harp on, is try to avoid lecturing. Unless that is the dynamic of the relationship between you and the child, because I know different kids, different students, different people respond differently to different means of communication. I would truly avoid doing that, because that's just going to put their wall up, and it's going to go in one ear out the other. Also, try to not act as if you have all the answers. Ask them about their ideas, how they would handle it, especially if they're teenagers, right? The younger children, I would say ages 10 and below, you want to more so coach them and model. But that's really this the thing that's going to transcend for parents and coaches throughout one's lifespan is modeling, right? They're going to respect what you do, not always what you say. Right? That's the thing that's really going to resonate with them. Like, okay, dad's telling me to take out the trash, but dad never takes out the trash, right? My coach is telling me to pay him respect, but he's always demeaning me, something like that. If you don't appear as if you have all the answers, it makes you feel human, which is going to let their guard down, and they're going to build trust with you, and that's going to make them feel more receptive and being open towards you and being more honest. I got a couple more. Allow him or her to talk without interruption until they make their point. So let them finish. I know that sometimes we have heightened emotion too, and this is something I struggle with sometimes with my loved ones. It's easier with clients because I got that detachment. But when you have a personal connection with someone and you have like an answer, or you know what you want to tell them, and it's going to help them, try to take a deep breath and just slow down your thoughts for a second and wait until they have a gap. Right? And that's when they break eye contact, or they will, sit back. You'll see in their body language when they're finished. And that's when it's time for us to pop in.
Embrace the pause, right? Embrace some silence.
And then the last one is just show respect for their point of view, even if you don't agree with it. Right? Because it's perfectly okay to not say you condone their behavior, their actions, or their thoughts, but at least respect. Because if you show them that, then they're going to repay that same respect towards you, and it's going to allow for better communication, right? Because we don't always have to agree, but we've got to make sure that we still have the connection, right? And you honor the relationship you have with them, like not doing the name calling or the minimizing or the belittling. Right. One thing I always tell parents of my clients is make sure that you differentiate the behavior from the person. Because if you say you are a piece of whatever, or you are terrible because you made this mistake, they're going to personalize that, and that's going to become their sense of identity, versus saying this behavior you did was not okay for these reasons, but you're still good, right? Somehow throwing that into the mix, that you cherish them as an individual.
Mm-hmm. It's good. Ryan?
Yeah, I love all that. And I will, I guess, add three things from my end. One is why. Like if we start asking, why'd you do that? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Like, and it's not the why of like, hey, define your why and figure out why you're motivated. It's the, hey, like questioning their purpose on what they were doing on the field, on the court, in life. Like, think about it, if a boss comes into you and says, so why'd you do that? We get defensive immediately, right? If someone starts questioning that piece of it, and the walls go up again and we shut down and the conversation ends versus grows.
Yeah, it's like, sorry to interrupt, but like what's the answer you're looking for, right? Like what are they going to say? Like, I really was just hoping that I would mess up royally and that everybody would look at me and right. Like, there's never a good answer to the why question. We never have one.
Yeah. I hope to be seen as stupid. Thanks. All right. Move on.
I ask Jack that all the time though, right? Like, why did you dump the pasta on the ground? Right? Like, I don't know. Well,
is there an answer he's going to give that you're like, oh, okay,
yeah,
cool.
There's never an acceptable answer. It's for me, right? It's for me, not him.
Yeah. Comparison's a big one. So if we want to avoid adding increased pressure and anxiety, if we start comparing them to their teammates, to an older sibling, to anything, it's going to add that anxiety. They're already probably doing it themselves, right? And when we go and then bring it, now it's somebody else bringing it to us as well. And I hear this all the time with, well, your older sister, your older brother didn't do this, or they were great at this, or they were really good at math. What's wrong with you? Like, you hear it all the time from kids I work with, whether it's sport, school, or just life in general. They're in an age of social media where they're constantly comparing themselves to everything. They can look up stats. They can watch video on athletes. They have so many tools that it can be amazing, but often work as comparing themselves and seeing themselves as not good enough already. We don't need to add that extra layer of that from parent, right? We need to help them see their journey and see what they're doing, how they're competing against themselves, how their growth is, and for themselves, not compared to other people. And my final one goes along with that is result thinking. And you'll hear me say this a lot. And this is where I always get coaches going, like, head cocked to the side and going, what do you mean? And even some like high level athletes are like, wait a minute, that's why I do what I do, is for the results, right? Like, I had a swimmer going like, well, I can't forget about the time because that's what I do. Like, I have to know the time. Like, but when we go result oriented thinking, the second that result is threatened, anxious, fear, all those things pop in. Think of it from the school standpoint. So they are in fight or flight kicks in. They take an AP class. Their first week, they take a quiz and they don't do well on it. They think they have to get an A to be worthwhile, right? I'm only good enough if I get an A. That first test, they fail. What's the first thing you do? And I see this as a school counselor every day. I need to drop the class. That's flight at work. Uh-oh, that result that I'm going to define myself by is being threatened. I need to get out. When we come back to process thinking instead of result thinking, okay, you failed that first quiz. Now what? What did we learn from that? What do we need to do to prepare for the next one? How do we deal with that setback in the moment? What did we learn from it? What do we take from it? And the process of the class, the process of learning is what we want to focus on, because that keeps them in the solution focus mode, right? And that reduces that anxiety and fear and pressure they put on themselves for that final result. And we see it in sport. You see teams start to fall apart when all of a sudden they might not win, right? All of a sudden they go behind a couple runs or go behind some points or whatever it is. And all of a sudden now we start yelling at each other. We start barking back at coach. Parents start yelling at the referee more, like, because that final result is being threatened. And we define ourselves as good enough based on the result. So we need to get them out of result thinking and look at the journey and the growth that they'll go through. And that's a lot what I do is disconnecting from the result as the defining moment.
That's solid, brother. All right. I got two things I'm excited to share. Make sure you got your notebooks. Okay. First one, the questions that you ask always, always, always show the other person what you value most. So I've been working on this with parents a lot lately, right? Like, and parents will say, well, you know what? I value the process more than the outcome, right? So like, I don't know why my athlete feels pressure or anxiety from me to perform, because I always tell them, right? Like, I just want you to make progress, right? Perfection's not the answer, right? Results aren't what I care about. I want you to make progress. But if the question that you always ask after their game or after their practice is, how did you do today? That reveals what you value most. Your questions always, always, always reveal your values. So if you value their effort, what question should you ask? Did you give your best effort today? If you value them having fun and enjoying the journey, what question should you ask? Did you have fun today? Right? So like, we got to be careful about this, because and man, we've been repeating the same questions, believe it or not, for years, some of you guys. And so again, it could all change the day that you start asking different questions. They'll look at you, they'll know, because it's not the same question. You'll break their pattern, right? Like, hey, did you have fun today? What? Like, they're going to be shocked because you never asked that question. So make sure you define what your values are and then ask questions that reinforce those values. And then the second piece I have is, who is the person that knows the answer to this question best? Who knows what you need to stop saying that's causing them pressure and anxiety? Just ask them, right? Johnny, Susie, what am I doing right now? And what am I saying? Every time I say it, it causes you to have more pressure and anxiety. And if they say, nothing, mom, you do well, it's my coach, then it's like, you can give yourself a little fist bump on that, right? It's a good thing, but I think they know best. And so I encourage you just to ask them, right? That shows, and that models major humility. So if humility is one of the values that you want your kids to possess, the best way to pass that down is to be humble when you're working with them. So those are my two big points. Sal or Ryan, you guys got anything else on those?
I just want to touch base on what Bonnie asked in the chat. Also, Andrew, I love that, man. I love giving them more of the power and control there, because then that'll activate the problem solving component of the brain to say, okay, what can I do about it? It's awesome. But Bonnie asked, what do you do when they compare themselves to others? And what I wrote back was asking them what are the benefits and the drawbacks to making those comparisons. I do this with every client that does that outwardly and says, I'm not as good as my older brother because he's valedictorian, he's captain of the whatever it may be, whatever those comparisons are. Asking them, okay, what are you getting out of it? Because then that's going to allow, again, that critical thinking to kick in, and they're going to assess, okay, and putting on like a list is going to be really useful, like a drawbacks, comparisons, pros and cons, allowing them to see, on paper what it's doing to them, and the very little that they actually get out of it is very beneficial.
Good stuff.
Yeah, the exercise that I do, just very similar to Sal, so to reinforce that, because it's so important, as it can be the ABC model, right? Like what's the activating event? We can call it comparison here, right? So comparison is the activating event. Then in the middle there's what's our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors around that activating event. So like comparison, I think I'm not good enough, they're better than me. You actually walk through the thoughts they're having with them. Right. Okay. So what's the emotions there? I feel, sad. I feel like whatever, frustrated. I feel, and you label those emotions. How does that? What behavior do we see out of you there? Well, I'm more withdrawn. I don't feel confident to raise my hand or to participate. And then you ask them, what's the consequence of that? So that outcome, like what comes out of that? Well, then I'm not being my true self, or I'm not sharing my thoughts, or I'm not being the leader I know I can be. Okay, so let's use that same activating event and let's change the consequence. Let's change the outcome. Okay, I am being the leader I want to be. I am speaking up. I am doing this. Okay, what thoughts allow for that? What emotions allow for that? What behaviors lead to that outcome that you want? And let them come up with that. Again, I can't stress enough, they have the answers inside of them. and they're very smart young men and women. And they know themselves, whether they know it or not, and they come up with some amazing answers, and they kind of look at that and go, yeah. And I've gotten feedback like weeks later that they're like, that was like that simple exercise has, like, I've used that in school, I've used that in sport, I've used that in life. It can be as much as a bad call by a referee, right? That's an active event for a lot of athletes. Referees never make mistakes, right? Okay, what's the consequence? Well, I'm distracted. My arms are up in the air. I'm stomping. I'm yelling. I don't get back on defense, and my person ends up scoring or whatever. Okay, well then, what do we need to do next time the referee blows his whistle that way, right? Like, I can say my activating word to myself. I can, like, get myself focused and get back on defense and ready to deal with what's next. And the same thing in life, like, so can we find what's creating that anxiety and pressure, and let them, like, work through that a bit. But I love that model of, and asking them. I think we keep coming back to that, don't we?
Mm-hmm. It's good. All right. What sort of strategies can parents of young athletes do to calm competition anxiety or focus that anxiety to the athlete's benefit?
I got one.
Yeah, go for it. I love that one.
So I like to use visualization. There was a really, really cool study done, and I think it was 2012, where they had 6 subjects shooting free throw shots. Right, they were practicing their free throws, and then they had the other half of the subjects sitting on the baseline, just visualizing. Okay, your form, bending your elbow, all the techniques to shooting the free throw. And then when they put it to the test, they had both the equal amount of percentage and made free throws in both subjects with the practice and the visual. So creating visualizations is really useful. Before competition, allow them to sit. Well, really, when it comes to the anxious feelings, once their body's activating, what you want to do is you want them to focus on activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest version. It's going to be the one that calms you down. And you can do that through deep breaths, right? Breathe in for 5 seconds, hold for 2, breathe out for 6. I always go with the thought of making sure that you exhale longer than you inhale. That stretching is going to be really useful. A lot of them do it as is. Having a routine is going to be very useful. So if it's like breathing, listening to certain music, I would meditate and I would do visualization exercises. So I would like almost put myself through like a guided meditation of how I was going to play, how I was going to get back on defense, right? Different plays here and there. And that, what it does is it creates this future rehearsal in the brain, meaning the brain can prepare for said obstacles and situations before they occur, and also identify what those said obstacles will be, so they won't be so unknown, right? Because anxiety lives in the unknown and the uncertainty of situations. So finding something to help calm their bodies down, right? Breathing, music, stretching, but making sure it's a routine, and then allowing them to visualize, sitting with them through that, or letting them do it themselves. I mean, in the beginning, my dad and I would sit through it. He'd be like, okay, see yourself, bring the ball down the court, squaring up for the shot. And then after a while, I'm like, all right, I'm old enough to do it myself. And I just put it in my routine. But routine is going to be really useful in creating consistency with the mind and something it's used to and it can control.
Oh, so your dad did that with you? That's pretty cool.
He was a wild dude. He loved to be part of every step
Yeah.
of the process.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I only like this question again if the dynamic is coach athlete, like you were talking about earlier, Sal. I think it was you. Like, I like this question if you guys have that dynamic, but if you don't, it's not a big deal, right? But that's when you need to, like, again, find a performance counselor, mindset coach, someone that can walk your kid through this, because visualization is powerful. But man, I have so many athletes who, like, they're like, oh yeah, I tried that, it didn't work. Really? You tried it one time and that's enough data for you to tell me that it didn't work? So it's like, let's commit before. I'm sure that Ryan, when you work with athletes, it's like, we're going to commit to visualization for the next 12 weeks, right? Not just one time and see if it works, because it depends on the state of mind and emotion that you're in when you do it as well. So that's good stuff. Ryan, what do you have to add to this one?
I could speak on this one for an hour itself, I think, but I'm gonna condense it. One of the things I do is also help we explore what emotions are best for each individual athlete. Because some athletes tell me I perform best when I'm calm and relaxed going into my sport. Some and like kind of low arousal, right? Some are like, no, I need to be high arousal. I need to be excited. I need to be a little bit angry. I need to be a little bit this. And then we explore, well, how do you create that? So one, let them kind of let us know, because a little bit of anxiety, as Sal touched on in the beginning, like some say, no, I like feeling a little anxious. I feel a little bit like, hey, there's something here that gives me that focus for what I want to do.
Man, that's so good.
We want to check in with them. And when are you at your best? Oh, I'm at my best when I'm high arousal, excited, confident, happy. But okay, cool. Let's pick 2 or 3 of those and let's create those. What creates confidence in you? Right? So self-talk, visualization. What are you saying to yourself before performance? What are you not saying to yourself? What I guess what are you stressing? Like, what energy are you putting into those words? Are you saying it with positive energy, or are you saying it more defeatedly? All that stuff matters. So one of my favorite exercises I do, and I'll do it with every athlete I work with, is developing what we call their performance persona. And it's quite simple. It's really helping them choose 3 adjectives that define them at their best. So, hey, I'm resilient, I'm relentless, and I'm fast. Okay, let's unpack each of those words. What does relentless mean to you? Well, it means I just keep getting after it. I go, go, go. Okay, are you only relentless when things are going well? Well, no, because you're relentless. That's a definer of you. So you go, even when things aren't going well, you're still relentless. Even when you make a mistake, you're going to get right back and get after it, because this is how you define yourself. So before a game, on the car ride, whatever, that's what you're repeating to yourself. I am fast. I'm relentless. I'm resilient, right? And you already know how you define those. You know what those mean. And I put a visual to it. So I am these 3 things, and I am a fill in the blank. So I had one boxer I was working with, and he's like, I am a lion. I was like, oh yeah, like strong, attacking. I love it. He goes, no. He goes, that's part of it. He goes, but the ring is my jungle. I'm the king of my jungle. I was like, oh, here we go. And he was like, they're coming into my kingdom and they're trying to dethrone me, but this is mine. They can't have it. And this is where he built this this image of himself as the defender of his kingdom. And he tapped into anger. He tapped into some of these other things that we sometimes look at as negative, but it was the best thing for him in his performance, right? And so helping them define their strengths and define how they how they see themselves on the field, on the court, heck, in life, right? And then repeating those things to themselves. So they're filling that void with positivity, with strength, versus letting those doubts creep in, right? And then putting the visualization in. There are studies with golf that are fascinating with visualization. It hasn't helped my golf game, but that's because I don't play.
Yeah.
I'm just picking up the game. But yeah, so I would say self-talk, visualization. I love the deep breathing if we are looking to calm things. We'll talk about finding our 5 level all the time. What's your ideal level of excitedness? 10, you're off the walls and you're not performing. 1, you're not into it. What's your 5, right? And how do we find that? And if you're above it, check in with yourself. How do we deep breathe, visualize, self-talk to bring us down? And if we're low, how do we energize ourselves in that moment to get us close to
call that?
Finding our 5.
Finding our 5. That's good. We call it acting medium, but it's I like finding our 5 because that creates like some action steps on how are we going to get there.
I'm a big scaling person. I'll ask a scale of 1 to 10 on most things I talk about because it gives them a quick check in and a quick thing to compare to if they need to.
That's good. Yeah, I'll just close this one out because I know there's parents on the call that are like, I'm just trying to get my kid back to baseline, right? Like they're in a real tough place mentally. Like I'm not at the place where it's like, let's take your performance to the next level. Like I'm just trying to get up to baseline here. And I think that some of these techniques and tactics that these guys are talking about, they could be mistaken as only helpful for sports, but it's like, this is the kind of mentality and the inner grit that you want your kid to have when life hits them with any kind of challenge. So it's like your why for these things might be different than somebody else's, right? It doesn't have to be about sports performance, but the core of it is the same. It's like, how do I build something inside of my son or daughter that they're going to take with them for life? I think finding your 5 works for anything, man, not just sports, right? So that's a really valuable tool, really big takeaway there. How can I help them not mentally break down and beat themselves up for making mistakes? So this kind of reveals that whole perfectionist mentality, reveals maybe just some like expectations that they have for themselves. What do you guys have on this one?
How do we talk about mistakes? Like go back to Andrew's point on like 2 questions ago, like our questions reveal our values. How do we discuss failure, mistakes, setbacks? Like, are they panic stricken? Are they like, uh-oh, you screwed up? Or do we look at them as part of our journey, right? Like mistakes are going to happen for every single athlete, right? Like I've never seen someone perform perfectly in any game. And that goes to any pro you want to mention, right? Like there's never been the perfect game. Well, baseball you can argue with. But at the end of the day, like how can we show, I'll backtrack. My favorite poem is If by Kipling, if anyone's ever read it. And in there, I'm going to paraphrase and mess up a couple of the words, but he says, when you can learn to treat triumph and disaster as the imposters that they are, right? Triumph and disasters as the imposters that they are, meaning we used to say to our players that wins and losses are fleeting. So like the second they're done, the second they happen, they're over. And I see Kipling's words like, hey, triumph is an imposter. Just because you triumph right now today doesn't mean it's going to happen automatically every time. And just because you failed today or made a mistake today doesn't mean that's going to happen every time. They are in the moment and they're both equal educators if we're willing to listen to them. I think I said that in the presentation. Like, can we show them how that mistake can help us grow as much or more than a success? And if this goes back to process and result, if our ultimate goal is the process of becoming versus being successful right now, then we can have a different relationship with mistakes. And that's a conversation and helping them like through that. That's tough because their athletes are taught to be perfect, and that if they mess up, they've let people down, they let their team down, themselves down, people are disappointed in them. And it's really difficult to break that back down without being purposeful with it, because it's been ingrained in our culture for so long.
I love what you're saying, Ryan, right? Educating them that mistakes are part of the process, right? It's how we get to success. So we've really got to change the interpretation, the perception around that word. I can't help but think about when I was in my college days. I was the type of athlete that if I had a bad game, do not come up and talk to me. I don't want to speak with you. I don't want to be in your presence. If you're going to bring up the game, I was just so engulfed in my distress and my self-defeating and self-limiting talk in my brain that I couldn't create the space for anyone in that time. And something my coach would always say is, he would tell me this often, is that to be a good basketball player, to be a good athlete, you got to have a poor memory. I never knew what that meant in the moment. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I've got to remember the plays. I've got to remember the footwork, the technique. I said, no, hold on, take a breath. That's not what I mean. You've got to create a system where when you make a mistake, yes, you acknowledge the mistake, you identify what you can do differently, right? Focusing on the process, not the results. Looking back, what did you do well? What can you change? That dialogue is going to be huge for students, for your players or your kids. But being able to let go of the mistake. So what I would start to do is I created a mantra that my dad helped me out with. Is meaning when I made a mistake and I was focused on it too long, because I played a game of basketball. Basketball moves quick. It's all explosive. It's up and down the court. If you're dwelling too much, you're going to get taken out because you're going to be way more susceptible to mistakes. So the mantra that I would hold in my brain is if I had a turnover and I realized what I did wrong, because 90% of us know what we did wrong when we made said mistake, I would say flush it. Just flush it. That is giving me the permission. That's my brain saying it's okay to let it go and to move on. So that's going to be huge. But when we're trying to help them with beating themselves up with mistakes, what I always wanted was someone to ask me, hey, what did you do well? What did you do well, right? What can we identify as something we want to keep in place moving forward? Because that's going to give them motivational footing, right? You're always going to work harder for the employer, for the voice in your head that encourages you versus treats you like a slave, right? That tyrant to slave relationship. You want someone to build you up. So you got to be mindful. What did you do well? Keep that in place and mindful moving forward. And then what can you do differently next time? Or what else could have been done? Right? So it's allowing them to navigate that space. And just like Ryan said, not Ryan and Andrew said this as well, just not hyper focusing on the, that's all I would think about. I would always just think about how many points did I score and how many assists I had. And if I didn't meet this watermark each game, I'd feel like an absolute failure.
Yeah, I love that. And we do mistake rituals with clients all the time. And it's that mantra. And then we try to give an actual motion to it as well. So it's twofold. So we had a baseball player that was like, he liked to flush it. And so he'd do a little like, almost like down by his hip, like flushing the mistake. And he said, yeah, one of my teammates called me. I was like, what's that? He goes, flushing it. He goes, I love it. I've had people just do like the brush off, brush the hands, tap the side, like anything that like reminds your brain, move on. Where I would leave this on my end is if we wait until that moment to try it for the first time, it's not going to work, because we're in heightened states of anxiety and stress, and we're already beating ourselves up. We don't have the energy levels to create change. Right. So we need to practice this when we're not stressed. I love that your dad sat with you like and did this. Like my dad was very much like figure it out. Which I appreciated too, because I found a way to like figure things out on my own. So my dad never talked to me about sport or really much at all about anything I was looking to do. It was like, okay, do you have fun? Cool. See it. Like he was always there. He was supportive, but it was never any conversation. It was like the exact opposite of what Sal's describing. And looking back, I'm like, I wonder if that was purposeful. I got to ask him. But practicing it beforehand and letting them create that space for themselves, say, what will I do? How do I want to respond? What's going to be a productive response for me? And then the last piece is visualization works after the fact as well. I would isolate myself on the bus and sit there, and I would replay the game in my head. And I go, okay, what did I do in this circumstance? And I'd play it. And I'd be like, yeah, I did that good. The footwork was good. It got there. Great. I gave up a goal. I was a goalie. So I know goalies are nuts. Me included. I would replay the goal in my head. And then I would go, okay, what would I do differently next time? And then I'd replay myself doing that very thing and see myself making the save. And then I'd replay it again and be like, okay, yeah, that's how I would get to that ball. Cool. And that's what I'd walk away with. So the first hour on the bus ride home, I didn't talk to teammates. I just replayed the game in my head. We didn't have video back then. I'm dating myself a little bit. And I would just replay it. And then I'd be like, okay, I'm good. Move on down and go hang out with buddies on the bus. But I'd give myself that first hour to visualize and replay it.
That's really good. Those are all good tips. My one tip would be, I always share the Kobe Bryant story of when he was 16 years old, he was quickly rising up through the ranks, becoming a national phenom. And he went through this period of time where he missed a bunch of free throws. And his coach was like, Kobe, what's going on, man? You keep missing shot after shot. They're free throws, man. What's going on? And Kobe was like, man, coach, it's a lot of pressure, man. Everyone's watching me. Everyone's expecting big things from me. And coach said, hold on, Kobe, I didn't realize that you were that selfish and self-absorbed. And Kobe's like, what? He's like, you think everyone's watching you all the time? Who do people pay attention to? Pay attention to themselves. You're not that special. So when he flipped it on him, what do we do immediately? We're like, oh, no, I'm not selfish. I'm others focused, man. I'm focused on the team. So anytime an athlete is way too dialed in on their mistakes, I'm just like, are you a little bit too focused on yourself right now? Don't you play on a team? And man, that usually flips them pretty quick. And then they're more open to learning like the mistake ritual or a technique to help them with that. But if they can recognize that maybe they're embarrassed, right? And they're kind of focused on themselves a little bit too much. They always mask it, I found, by saying, I don't want to let my teammates down. I'm like, I don't think that's the case. I think that you're embarrassed and you don't want to look like you don't have it all together. And so the only other thing I would say is figure out if this can be modeled as well, right? If you're out there as a mom or dad and you're taking risks and you're challenging yourself and you're making mistakes and you're showing them, real life, how to respond to it. That's the best example that they could have is watching you guys and how you respond to mistakes. So next,
can I chime in real quick on that?
Yeah, go for it.
With that, think about, and the youth sport game is fascinating. And now that I have kids in it, I see it from a whole different angle. But what happens? We want, soccer, we want kids to play with their off foot. We want them to shoot with their left foot, shoot with your left foot. But what happens when they take a shot with their left foot and they miss? What does the sideline sound like of parents? Oh, disappointment, right? That kid hears that. I just disappointed 30 people over there. Do you think they're going to want to shoot with their left foot again? We do these things. We think we're cheering for them. We think we're invested and we're doing this, but our own reactions a lot of times, and kids will reference this. Oh, I don't do that. Why? Well, because my coach yelled at me, or because the parents all were disappointed, or this or that. So they avoid doing the very things that are going to make them better. Mm-hmm. And you brought up my hero, Kobe Bryant, in one of those interviews when he was that same age. He was 14, 15. He says, I went and watched everyone who was ranked better than me, and I found out what made them ranked better than me. And I found out were they faster, taller, good jump shot, good dunk, whatever. And he goes, and then I went back and I used summer and I used all these games to work on my weaknesses. He goes, I wanted to make mistakes. I would work on only my left hand. I'd work on only my fadeaway. I'd work on only this game. So when it mattered, and now we're 18, he goes, they were still doing the same old thing that made them successful at 14 while I had an all-around game. So those mistakes that we're making at a young age are important for us to become our best selves, whether that's on the field, on the court, in school, or in life. How do we coach our kids through those mistakes? How do we help them see what they can respond, how they can respond effectively, and teach them mistakes aren't the setback. Quitting after the mistake is, right? And letting those mistakes run us when we can respond to them and learn from them and move forward. And I love a Kobe Bryant story, but what are our reactions on the sidelines? That's huge.
All right. That was a mic drop moment right there. go back and listen to that one. That was really, really solid. Thanks for bringing that up. It reminds me of the whole, you're the athlete out there that's trying new things and you're making mistakes, but they're good ones, right? Like they're good mistakes because you're testing your limits. You're trying to get better. And first they'll laugh at you, then they'll question you. And then all of a sudden, if you stick with it long enough and you go through the embarrassment and you go through the trials and it's like, it's not perfect, eventually they'll admire you or they'll follow you, right? So it's like you got to go through that kind of those steps to get there. So that's pretty good stuff, Ryan. Thank you for that. How can I help them recognize they're being a follower and not a leader? Oh man, I don't know how you point that out. I do know the wrong way to do it, which is what parents do sometimes, which is stop being such a follower. Don't say that. Sal, what do you got on this one?
What I love to use in these circumstances, because I get this regularly from my clients themselves, especially the young adults, and they'll say something along the lines of, I feel misguided. I feel like I'm just kind of going through the motions, and what that's telling me about their psyche. Someone we look up to. So I always ask, who are your role models? Who, whether it's an athlete, whether it's an entertainer, whether it's, an author, whatever that may be, actor, identify that person and then break down their behaviors, their mindsets, their perspectives, and even beliefs. And once we do this, and this is something that Tony Robbins is a big advocate of, is finding what they did, using that as your baseline, as your template. I did the exact same thing with building my private practice. So my partner in my private practice, he was the therapist that I wanted to be like. He had them, and he just had the personality that everything's okay, that I can help you solve your problems because I'm so secure, balanced. He presented that way. So you allowed that space to allow them to feel empowered. So I used all his tenets, his attributes, and even a lot of his vernacular. And once I had that basis, then I was able to kind of put my own little spice on it, right? It's like something that Bruce Lee would always say. He said, take what is useful, right? Take from those what is useful, discard what is not, and add what is uniquely your own. So allow them to identify the leader they want to be through other people they look up to. And then lastly, this is going to be the most profound piece of advice when steering a young person towards leadership qualities is find people you want to be like, because you're going to be a product of the people that you spend the most time with. So as the parent, as the coach, we want to embody the model of a leader that we want them to see and we want them to practice off of, and then making sure that they're putting themselves into social environments where they're around others that they look up to. It's like recently I entered a Bible study group with Andrew and a couple of other guys, which he's close with, and I'm building strong relationships alongside. And these are the people that I look up to in business and relationships, mentality, perspectives, beliefs, spirituality, and being around them. The more I'm around them, the more that I feel empowered to be like them. And then in your brain, it'll turn into reality before you know it.
Solid.
Yeah. Totally agree. The company you keep, and I'd say, and Andrew, we started talking about this. We had coffee this morning, and he asked me about do time management stuff, whatever. And so I guess my answer to this one is I do inventories, and we do a priority inventory, we do a time inventory, and we do a person inventory. And so what I mean by that is I have them define their priorities in life. What are your top 8, 10 however far they want to go with it, right? And so and then we take those 8 and then we rank them out, like put 1, 2, 3, 4, put them in order. So what means the most to you, right? And that helps us also deal when priorities conflict. So if like you say, hey, sport's my top priority, and then friends are number 4, well, friends want to go do something, I have my sport. Well, I've already had that conversation with myself. I'm not going to be influenced by a friend here because I've already said to myself, hey, this is my priority. I'm going to go do that. Once that's over, I can go join my friends, right? Then we do a time inventory and we look at, okay, how much of your day is used towards your top priorities? How much of your top 3 priorities take up your day? How much of your day is taken up by priorities 4, 5, 6, 7? How much of your day is taken up by something that's not even on your priority list? Pointing at this thing, right? Like, I've never had someone put social media or a cell phone on their priority list, but yet when we break down their time inventory, sometimes they're on their cell phone for 6 hours. They practice sport for 1. They do homework for 1. They hang out with their family for 1. And it's like, oh, so you said family, sport, and school are your top 3 priorities, but your cell phone's getting the majority of your time, right? Like, what happens if we repurpose out of these 6 hours? I'm not telling you to never be on it, but what if you repurpose an hour back to family, an hour of that back to sport, an hour of that back to your school? Do you think you're going to grow in each of those areas? And then we do a person inventory. Who in your life supports you, who pushes you, who helps you grow, who challenges you in the right way, who's going to call you out when you're, maybe making those bad decisions, and who in your life isn't doing that? Who in your life is actually taking you away from your priorities? Who's the person that says, oh, I know you told me you have this goal, but I want you to come to this party instead, right? Is that a person who's looking out for you? Do we need to follow that person? And help them really break down their own priorities and then see how much they're living by their priorities. And I think that gives them that personal leadership.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. I think with this one, leadership, to me at least, it's such a high value of mine that it's important enough for me to define it within my family, so that I can give my kids a workable definition of it. And it's going something like this. It's, leadership in our family means discover your uniqueness, right? Your God-given uniqueness, which is different from somebody else's. Stick to your values. So know what your values are and then stick to them, right? That's our definition of leadership. And then find ways every single day to serve others and to help others. So it's that upside down model of leadership, that the leader's not on top. The leader is always racing to the bottom, right? How can I serve others? How can I help them? So it's like, for me, like, I'm going to define it once my kids are old enough, so that they know what it means to be a leader, at least the way, right, Dad defines it. They might come up with their own definition down the road, but in the beginning, at least they're going to have mine. And then I'm going to try to lead them towards that, because all 3 of those things are things they can control. They can't control if they get the C, right? They can't control if they get the captain position. They can't control if, well, I guess they could control if they're the loud, outspoken one, but man, that might not be them, right? It might not be them. So I would say define it and then repeat it over and over again. And then don't overreact if they do mess up and they do go on that follower path. That's advice that I got a while back before I even had kids. It was like, if your kid starts to stray, if your kid makes bad decisions, Tanya can attest to this because she's shared stories with me, but like, if your kid does something that's like, oh, what on earth? Like, they clearly went off the deep end there. Don't overreact. Just take a deep breath, calmly listen. Oh, interesting. So I'm sure a lot of you parents have already heard that advice, but if they aren't being that perfect leader, remember that you weren't always that perfect leader, and don't overreact there. You guys got anything else to add on this one, or any parents?
One more when it comes to sport. Leadership comes in so many different packages. Mm-hmm. Leadership isn't only the captain. It's not only the loud, boisterous one. It's not only the best player. I had one client that told me he was the leader because he was the best player, right? And I said, okay, well, does leadership come any other way? He goes, what do you mean? And so we defined it like, hey, isn't a leader like seeing that equipment needs to go out to the field and picking up without being asked and getting it there? Isn't leadership helping the trainers bring the water back or load things up? Isn't leadership seeing a teammate struggle and put your arm around them and help them through it? Leadership can be a teammate struggling in biology and you're good at that subject, so you help them through that and tutor them. Like, there's so many different ways of leading that each of our kids probably has leadership qualities in some way. And how can we like help them identify that and play to those strengths and utilize that more often and let them fall into those leadership roles that are natural to them without trying to force them into that loud, boisterous person. It's not always it's not natural for them, and they're going to shy away from that. So, but I'm sure they can be leaders in other ways too.
Yep, that's great stuff. All right, let's move on. We're going to try to aim for 9 o'clock here. We got 12 minutes. That'll make it a 90-minute call. I know I said we weren't going to go past, but hey, there's at some point people got to go to bed. So we'll try to make this happen. How do I encourage them to be vulnerable when they proudly claim to hate talking about their feelings? That's a tough one. Who's up on this one? I think I got to think about this one first.
Vulnerability. That's such an important word, though, isn't it? Why do they hate talking about feelings? Why do we hate talking about feelings? Man, it's such a taboo subject in our society. Meanwhile, you travel anywhere in the world and it's less taboo. It's probably most like here where it's like, well, you can't have these feelings. I've had so many, and Sal, you might be able to touch on this more. I've had so many clients that tell me they don't want to talk about feelings. And I work a lot with like teenage, young adult, young men and boys that like are taught not to. We're taught no fear. We're taught like, you can't be sad. They hide those, they mask those, and they come out one way or another. And Andrew talked about a little bit of that, but like I look at anger as usually there's fear underneath it. But so many of my clients are like, I'm not going to talk about feelings. I don't even know why I'm here. And then within like the first few like conversational pieces, they're like, yeah, that just like pisses me off. I'm like, well, that's a feeling. They're like, well, yeah, I guess so. And then they start talking about that. Oh, that felt good. And it's like, they want to sometimes, they just don't know how to. And again, I think it's back to creating that space where they can, and we don't have to solve it. We don't have to like rescue them from it. I'll end it here for myself. I look at emotions as neutral. Like I don't look at positive emotions or negative emotions. They're just emotions. Us humans have emotions. So like we have anger, we have sadness, we have joy. We don't have to label them as negative and positive, right? Because maybe we don't talk about them as much because we see like, well, sadness is a negative thing for me to talk about, or fear is a negative thing. I can't be fearless, or I can't have fear. And so we bottle it up, we hide it. If they're just feelings, they're part of the human condition. I mean, and again, I think the modeling piece comes back here is, do we talk about it? So we were just at Hershey Park and I found out my son's afraid of roller coasters. Not a great thing for Hershey Park. But he didn't know that either. And then, so we started talking and I was like, yeah, like fear's okay, man. Like, I'm not going to force you to do anything you don't want to do, but sometimes fear stands in the way of some fun and things that we're really good at. It's like, and I gave him an example when I was afraid and would hold myself back, or like fears I had about opening up my private practice. And he's like, really? Like you had fear? I'm like, yeah, man, it was new to me. I didn't know what to expect. I was putting myself out there. And he goes, oh, he's like, all right, I'll try it. And we were through the first loop. He goes, this is awesome. I'm like, I know. Right. And it's like, sometimes we just have to like acknowledge the fact that we all have these feelings and we've all felt fear. We've all felt sadness. We've all felt joy. And sometimes they lead to really good things, right? And it's okay to have that. And I think that's where I would kind of put it is start the conversation about you and see like eventually they start realizing they can talk about it too. And it might be more of a long game than a short game.
Sal?
Well put, Ryan. I can't help but think of a specific client. So I have a 12-year-old who is on the spectrum, autism spectrum, and he has, at least in the beginning when we first met and we started our therapeutic relationship, he's had constant outbursts, throwing, screaming, yelling, cussing. I mean, at one point there was a session where he was physically combative to me. He's smacking me in the face, he's kicking me in the stomach, and I had to give him like a bear hug and just calm him down. And he was so adverse to the word feeling. Right in the beginning, it was just like, nah, I don't want to talk about it. And he would just cross his arms. I don't be here. Get me out of here. You're trapping, like just all kinds of like just verbally abusive things. And that was him telling me that I'm coming from the wrong angle, right? I couldn't use the word feeling with him. So what I had to do was meet him where he's at and meet him on a platform that he's comfortable with. So I found out that he loves cars. So first we just opened up the conversation of cars and I got really interested in them. And then I started researching some cars and I would bring in everything that I learned. And he would talk about what he learned. He'd bring in his little cars, little compact cars. And we would just create so much dialogue and connection and bond over that. And then I can start opening the conversation of like, okay, like when a car breaks down, what's going on, right? He's like, well, you got to open up the hood. You got to figure it out. Okay. When you open up the hood and you assess what's wrong, like how do you know which part of the car is malfunctioning? And he would say like, oh, if it makes this sound, it's the alternator. If this sound, it's the engine. He knew so much. He knows so much about cars. He's just about a photographic memory. He retains so much information. And then once we identified that, and I'm like, okay, how do you fix it, right? And you take it to the mechanic. Mechanics can do this, that, and the third. And that was my transitional piece of like, okay, let's think about the car as a person. So I love that Brian was saying like coming from a different perspective. So I say as a person. So we kind of detach. Okay, when this part is causing disruption in you, what's happening, right? As opposed to saying, what are you feeling? I just say, what's happening? All right, well, I get a little frustrated. I want to throw something. Okay, all right, cool, we got that. And he's comfortable, but I can feel the threshold. So I got to stop there and then ask him more about it. Okay, when someone makes us feel disrespected, how are we feeling? But starting with the vernacular of other people's stories, right? These are we call them social stories. Just to start talking about that, and then once they have like a no name attached to this thing that has feelings that I was able to extrapolate from the car analogy, then I use my stories. Okay, when I was having trouble as a kid at your age, I would kick my dad if he didn't make the food that I wanted that night, or I would scream at him if he took my toy away and I wanted to continue playing with it and he said I couldn't. So then he's seeing it through my eyes. Like, oh, wow, okay, all right, you're experiencing this. This is cool. It was kind of humanizing it for me, kind of normalizing it. And then once we get through all of that, then we do a little bit of role playing. Now, this is going to be a little bit more difficult depending on the age range of whoever you're dealing with here, whether your kids or players of yours. But getting them into what it looks like, right? Like, I would ask him to show me his feelings, but here I'm gonna bypass that real quick, and just the last little bit is then allowing them to tell their story. And I would usually say, I just want to hear your side of it, and then kind of what was your perspective? Like, where did you when you threw the vase at dad? What was happening? And you just get their story, and then from there I start using feeling words. And I always ask their permission, but it's like creating like a very very sequential build up to that, because once you get to the end though, I know that seems like a lot of work, but once you get to the end, they're going to have the language, they're going to have the normalizing effect, and you're building and strengthening the muscle of communicating. Now we're there, so we're not at the coping skills part yet, because we've only been seeing each other for 6 weeks now. So then we're gonna talk about what can you do in those moments, and how can you benefit and take care of yourself, as opposed to like how can you just appease mom and dad.
Mm-hmm. So those are great points. Simple thing to add. I've had quite a few female student athletes who, Sal, I don't know how you and Ryan feel about Brene Brown, but they read Brene Brown's book about vulnerability. They watched her TED Talk, and it changed their life. Right? Like the way that she presents vulnerability, it's almost like she presents it in a way that like you want to do more of it. Like, it's like, I want to do more of this. Like, this is going to make my life better, which it will. So Brene Brown, a lot of females, but I think that it's good for males too. So putting that out there, that's my real one. And then my funny one is the Disney movie Inside Out. Ryan, Ryan, you made me think of that movie when you were saying anger, sadness, joy, and I'm telling you that movie does a great job of normalizing all emotions. So watch Inside Out with your family. That one.
I actually just had a client reference that.
Really?
They said, I said, how do you feel in this moment? They're like, have you seen Inside Out?
Yeah.
I feel like the green one. I was like, awesome.
Yeah,
I get you.
That's good, man.
Yeah,
that's good. All right, cool. Jason also put a good resource there in the chat box. Zenden, Be the Pond on YouTube. Really solid explanation about how feelings are like fish and how we are the pond. Cool. I'm excited. I'll check that out too. All right, let's do this. Are there any? That one's already been said. All right, so let's do this. Let's answer this question here in the chat box to finish up. How do you motivate a player who only wants to compete and has all the competitive tools and even thrives thrives in that moment or environment, but does not own the desire or dedication to consistently practice with a do before have mentality, which I'm assuming means you got to put in the work before you get the result. You got to do the thing before you get the confidence. So how do you motivate a player like this? Ryan, let's get your quick insights on this one, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
My quick one is, one of the first things we do is saying, what is your why? And part of that's motivation. So like I break why into 4 components, and it's like, what's your passion? Where did you first fall in love with it? 2, what's your motivation? Where motivation is without guaranteed like the outcome, what makes you show up day after day and put in the work? What's your expectation for yourself? And then what you're willing to sacrifice. And so in there, it's like, so here's your expectation. Does your motivation match your expectation? To help them like start defining it for themselves. The second part of that, I'd say sometimes natural consequence is the teacher of that. I think at 10, 11, 12, heck, I'd even say 13 or 14, I probably wasn't as motivated to go out and practice every day as I became at 15, 16, when I decided, ooh, I want to do this more. Like, this means something to me. It's mine, and I want something out of this. Like I said, my dad never pushed me into anything. No family member ever pushed. They would say every now and again, like, hey, maybe you should go for a run. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Once I decided I wanted it, I was lifting, I was running, I was out playing, I was shoveling snow to create a field for myself. Like, like it was mine. And sometimes I think, and I do this with my own son, because I said, hey, you want to go out and practice? You say you want to do this and this for baseball. Then I stop and I say, hey, if you ever want me to go out with you, I will. But I don't want it to be my thing that I make him do. I want him to love it if he loves it. And if he doesn't, well, then, he'll get to a certain level, and that's okay, right? Because it's his journey. I've been through mine. Right? I've played my sport. I've coached my sport. I've been through my journey. It's no longer mine. It's his. And so I kind of back off, and he's asked me to coach him. And then sometimes, just the other day, I was like out doing goalkeeper stuff with him for soccer, and it wasn't going well. Right. And I stopped and said, look, I'm not going to get in an argument, or this isn't going to come between us. So let's just play. No coaching. And he's like, yeah, I'd like that. I was like, cool. Right. And it stepped back. And if he decides that he wants to put in that time and work, he will. And if he doesn't, then, well, that's his journey. I think natural consequences and natural learning is huge in this one.
I couldn't have said that better, man. It also goes back to what we said in the beginning. Is this for him, or is this for me? Right? Is this because it's what's best for him if he really works really hard at this stage in his life, or is that really what I want for him? I've never seen it turn out well for a parent who tries to motivate their kid to do something. I've always seen it turn out well if a parent just aims to, again, be the inspiration for them, right? Don't aim to motivate them, aim to be an inspiration for them. And at the right time, when it matters most, it'll work out. Again, play the long game, right? Play the long game. If they go through a year where they're not motivated, it probably seems like eternity to a parent, right? For 1 year, for 6 months, they keep saying they want this, but they do not put in the work. Like Ryan said, it's okay. They'll find out what happens when they don't put in the work, right? They won't get the results. So these are all good points. Hey, parents, you guys have been so awesome. Let me pull up this so that you guys have contact information for Ryan and Sal if you guys want to reach out. That's right there if you want to take a picture on your smartphone or screenshot it. That's how you guys can get in touch with them. I did not ask if those are personal cell phone numbers, so beware. Are they?
No, that's my private practice cell phone. So you can text me, call me, email me, whatever works.
Yeah, cool. Sal, same for you. Just give it a call or a text, or does text not work for that?
Text does work for that. It's just my office line. So my office manager will get the text and she'll send it to me.
Cool. Well, I'll leave you guys with this, parents. My encouragement I'm going to leave you with is you've probably heard the phrase many, many times, it takes a village to raise your kids. It takes a village to raise your kids. And I'm actually going to push back against that for a moment. I think that the village helps, but I also believe that you've been given every tool you need to help them navigate their challenges in life. You're going to have to call on people like Sal when they go through big things. You're going to have to call on people like Ryan. But I believe that all these things that we're talking about tonight, like you've got what you need inside as the parent to do this thing and to help them get to where they want to go with their mindset, with their emotions. So tap into that, right? Remind yourself that you've got everything you need. And I think that sometimes we can feel like we always need outside. I hear this at PFP all the time. It's like, I need you guys to come alongside too and do this. I think we help, but you don't need us. You've got everything you need already. So thanks so much, parents. You guys rock. We love you. And we'll do this again soon, and we'll follow up with an email so that you got the recording. You can give it to your kids. You guys are awesome. We'll see you guys soon.
All right. Take care, everyone. Have a safe night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. You're awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. See you, Jason.
Great to see you.